Hey guys.
Hey y'all.
It's Lovely Birds. And anyways, today we are talking about...
So you just want to just throw it at me like that?
Come
Okay.
on.
So we are talking about how to approach one another when we...
To make sure you're in alignment when discussing like commitments and stuff like that. Just making sure you're on the same page. Yeah. All right, go ahead and start it off.
Good job, baby. So yeah, I would say for the husbands and for the men, I would say.
Yeah.
And this is something that you've helped me to see, and this is something that is one of those things that I'm being reminded of, and I think it's going to be something that, you know, it's just one of those things that it comes as a constant reminder. But being able to talk to you and have a conversation with you before making a direct decision. Mm-hmm. So whether that be like with finances, mm-hmm. or even when I feel like the Lord is leading, you know, us in a certain direction.
Yeah.
I think you have taught me, you've taught me to be able to have the conversation with you first, you know, rather than just being like, well, we need to do this and you just need to go and pray about it and get on the same page, right? So being able to have a conversation with you and have us, you know, be able to pray about it together and then from there make the decision.
Yes.
Yeah.
And today I think we talked about, as the wife, it's important for me to trust God first, and also trust the God in you when God has told you to do something that I may not agree with or whatever. And then I need to be open to, because I'm very stringent. I'm like, no, we already had said no in the past. Okay, I have to have a little bit of flexibility for God. He changed, well, he doesn't change, but things evolve as time goes on. And so I need to be flexible to move when he says move. And so we also talked about me needing to be willing to hear you out in your heart. But then we also talked about like tone with you. And so for men, just being cognizant of like not saying, like you said, this is what we need to do, X, Y, Z, but more so presenting it as like, you know, so I've been thinking and I've heard God say X, Y, Z. What are your thoughts? I want to talk to you about it some more, because as a woman, it's just not a good feeling to be told, well, this is what we're doing and this is what we're doing. Maybe some people like that. I don't. I like to be involved in the mix a little bit. And so it's nice to sit down and have a conversation where we talk about what you've heard from God, what you're thinking, and then giving me time to receive that. I can't take forever, but giving me time to receive it, to pray for myself, and then for us to come back and have a discussion. And then we also talked about, you know, just because God gives you a move to make, or he puts something in the forefront of your mind to think about, it doesn't mean you need to move right then and there. And so sometimes he's giving you like a preview of what's to come, so you can start planning for it. And so just making sure you take your time on doing movement when he gives you instruction. Not too much time and not jumping right into it, but in his timing.
And this conversation really came from, I think, one of the topics today within church, which was talking about submitting to God, and then we can resist the enemy. And I think it's important that when we learn to submit to God, it allows for us to be on the same page, and it allows for us to be covered. Because I love the example that our pastor used.
I was going to say, share the example.
Yeah. So he basically had one person represent Jesus. He had one person just, you know, be man, basically, and then another person represent the devil. Yeah. And he showed that when the man gets behind, when he's submitted to Jesus, then the devil is not facing the man, but he's facing Jesus. And so in the example, Jesus, the person who represented Jesus, he was so tall, you know, like you couldn't even see the man, you know. So Jesus was directly facing like the devil, the enemy. And so I think that perfectly aligns with when we allow ourselves to be submitted. And I know in marriage, where I was talking about like the woman submitted to the husband and all of that, but there's protection in that. And I think in me being able to have us be on the same page, opening the conversations for both of us to be on the same page, rather than just saying, get on this page.
Right,
you know?
right.
I know where we're going. You just need to see it, and you need to
mm-hmm.
get with the program, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows for us to both, move forward. Why are you laughing?
Because it's so funny. Because it's like, I just feel like that's a setup for so many men. But I know sometimes that's what it's like thought of is like, well, I'm the head, so I know.
Yeah.
But I think the same way that a woman needs to trust the God in her man, he needs to trust the God in her.
Mm-hmm.
That God will affirm what he's told him in her. I'm sorry, but I cut you off. But go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was basically saying, I think if I can make it easier for us to be on the same page, to be submitted,
mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing that really needs to be thought through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And something that, thank
mm-hmm.
you for enlightening.
You're welcome. But it's cool when you talk about the example. I think we were talking about of what Pastor said today, and how women, we may not be able to see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we'll try to do is like peek around and get a little glimpse, like looking to the left, to the right, under, just anything to kind of get a glimpse. And I think sometimes we have to just trust that we don't need to know everything the same way. And oh my gosh, it just reminded me of, I can't remember, I think it was the Lindsays, Heather and Cornelius. And correct me if I'm wrong, where they one time talked about how one of them sees big picture, the other sees the small details. And I think this is like another example of where you can submit to each other.
Yeah.
Where God may give you the big picture, I'm having a hard time seeing it because I'm seeing like you see Z and I'm seeing the rest of the letters in between, getting overwhelmed. And I think sometimes you need to be able to submit to each other enough to say, okay, I'm going to be the dream holder for us, but can you help us to get there by thinking of those small steps that we need to take, and we'll journey together.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I need to be reminded of the bigger picture because I'm so caught up on the small in between. Sometimes you need to help to kind of look at the in-betweens because because you're thinking about the bigger picture. And I think that's where the submission to one another comes from, is understanding that God has given us each unique gifts within your marriage and strengths that you should be pulling on, and have enough humility to submit to one another in those areas. So
and what I've thought about as you were sharing, I think being able to be submitted to God allows us to walk in obedience. I think of Lot's wife, and she was the one that looked back, and she turned into like the pillar of salt. And I think when we are like in alignment in that way, it allows us to be able to, both walk with God in obedience.
And I think it takes some of the stress away when you realize that you're walking with God. I'm walking like hand in hand with you, and we're following his footsteps together. Sometimes he has to come stand between us, and like we have to each hold his hands, or he has to put our hands together or whatever, but it's trusting in him that ultimately we are following his will. And so anything that happens in between us and our destination, we're covered. And then realizing that the journey may not look how we would like it to look, but there's beauty in that journey. There's gonna be heartache, excitement, whatever in that journey. And so I just appreciate the thought of submission and the security that it really does bring when you do submit appropriately and to the right person, and your husband is in a position where you do feel comfortable submitting to him. And when you're submitting to God, I think all of those, you wouldn't think of submission bringing security, but to me it really does. When you really think it, you can just like let go of some of the stress that you may have, let go of feeling like you have to figure it out all on your own. And it's exciting I think one of the most exciting things is when you've heard something, or sometimes you'll have us do things like, so like when it comes to our newsletter and we're trying to figure out what do we want to talk about this month, and we take time, we don't talk about it ahead of time, but we take time to pray, and then we talk about it, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's alignment. That kind of stuff is so exciting to see that we are already spiritually in alignment with what God wants us to do. It's just a reminder that he's in the midst of things. I love that feeling so much.
That's good.
So anything else on submission that you wanted to talk about? Or
No. I just think the importance of being able to have conversations where we are on the same page. Because I do think a lot of women especially feel a lot of heat with, oh, you need to submit to your husband and you need to, do this and this and that. But as husbands, we do have a responsibility to be able to come to you and not try to strong arm you into what we feel. It very well may be this is the will of the Lord. But if I am strong arming you into, well, you need to get yourself together, you need to pray and all of this other stuff, it just makes for a easier flow in following God and a gentleness.
Yes, because I think we as women need that gentleness. We do not respond well to like being, let's tell me what to do, like what? And so we need to be willing to be led. We need to be open to hearing. So I think it also comes with on each side being in a prayer mindset. The husband making sure he's like praying to God, asking, okay, you've told me this, how do I deliver this to my wife in the best way? Because we were talking about tone matters, the time you say it matters. There's just so many things to think about, and that is a beautiful prayer point, is just to ask God, how do I deliver this message the way you intend it to be delivered? And I think on the wife's end, my end, it's important for me to just be in prayer that God will open my heart and my mind and my ears to truly hear like your heart, and not hear what I want to hear at the end of the day, but to hear your heart, to hear your intent, and understand that I may not agree, but I don't have to directly respond. When you're telling me no, we're not doing that. No, God didn't tell me that. Okay, he might not have told me that. I might not have been listening. I don't know. But I need to be in a place where I can at least hear you initially and then go back and seek God for myself for clarity, confirmation, and then bring it back to you, and then we can talk together to move forward. So I think it takes just some prayer and some belief in God that he will help you navigate, because those conversations can be heavy sometimes. Like I'm thinking about like when you told us that when you told me that you heard we were needed to move to Arizona, that's a big thing, And so when God, I know it can be a little nerve-wracking for you guys to hear some things from God, because it's like, oh Lord, now I gotta tell my wife, and sometimes it can be a little nerve-wracking. And so I think in those times, just really allowing yourself as a man to be, and so that's it.
That's all I got.
All right, well, thank you guys for listening to our lovely talk on submission and alignment with God and all those things, and just making sure you are have unity in your relationship.
In alignment.
Yes, and alignment. All right, see you guys.